News Channel 8, Washington's source for live weather around the clock.
Joining me now live with more on the Beijing Olympics and their impact is Jeremy Haft, the author of All the Tea in China and blogger on the Olympics for HuffingtonPost.com. Jeremy, great to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Beverly.
What, if any, impact are the Games having on the U.S. economy?
Well, they're having more of an impact than you'd think. Right now, the one bright spot of the U.S. economy is actually the export sector. Some very exciting figures just came out today that for the first time in many years, U.S. exports to China, that means what we sell to China, is growing faster in dollar volume and amounts than what China is selling to us. And the Olympics have a big part of that. They're actually spurring exports to China, which helps create jobs here.
What kind of exports are we talking about here?
Well, all across the economy, and this goes to a fundamental disconnect between the Chinese capability and our capability. The Chinese need to import most of the modern goods and services their country needs to grow their economy. So that's everything from raw materials to components to high technology and services.
Swimmer Michael Phelps is probably the biggest story so far out of the Olympics. What impact is his success having?
Well, to the extent that the Chinese are putting so much on the line in terms of their national pride, it has a lot to do with the medal count and the psychology around the Games.
A lot of attention has been paid to protests when they happen. There doesn't seem to have been that many, or are we just not able to see them?
Well, I think we're not able to see them. Certainly there have been pens that have been set aside for protests. Those have not been in use. Those have applied to use them have actually either been arrested or deported. So I think that more spontaneous protests are happening in the square, and they're just being squelched before we can see them here.
And is there any kind of impact that that's having on China in terms of its openness and the efforts by some to see it be more open to having people protest openly?
Well, China is walking a tightrope. They're trying to put their best foot forward and look strong and good for the world, and yet they have a lot of people who are protesting. So is it good or bad for China? I think it makes them look worse in the world's eyes, and it ratchets up the tension of how China must live up to what it said it would do before it was given the Games.
Speaking of what it said it would do before it was given the Games, it's been criticized for blocking access to certain internet sites. How is it able to do this and actually get away with it? There hasn't been that, I mean, there's been an outcry, but it really hasn't changed anything.
Well, it's true, and we must remember that China is an authoritarian state. It does have a clamp on the media that its citizens can see, but it did agree to relax media controls before the Olympics, and it indeed is not living up to that. How that will play out beyond the Games is more of a wrestle and a push and pull in the media sector. I think you're going to see more and more media in China trying to push the line as to what they can report and what they can't report.
Now, in your current blog at Huffington Post, you say the world is still mostly in the dark about China. What is it that we don't know, and how is that having an impact in terms of the Olympic Games?
Well, I think most Americans see China as this juggernaut that's about to run over the U.S. in the world economy. And in fact, when you go to China and work on the manufacturing floor, you realize that they are light years behind us in most areas, but especially in capability. So that means that U.S. exports are rising because China must import goods from the U.S. that it can't make itself. And again, that's the one bright spot of our economy right now.
And is there a number that we can quantify in terms of that export good news that you're talking about? Yes.
Well, interestingly enough, it's all tied to consumer spending. Consumer spending in China is shooting through the roof while ours is stagnant. So their spending is up 23% while ours is flat, and that's what's driving exports.
All right. Jeremy Haft, blogger with Huffington Post and author of All the Tea in China. Thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it tonight.
Thank you for having me.